Welcome to Wealthing Talks. I am your host, Alicia Castillo Holley, bringing you real-life conversations from Silicon Valley or somewhere around the world. We will talk about disruptors, angel investments, venture capital, and of course, family offices. Join me along with my children, their families, friends, disruptors, and investors as we explore the fascinating world of creating wealth in a completely different and authentic way. Thank you so much for being here. It is such a privilege to count with on Marinella to be our guest for today. Marinella, thank you so much for being here with us.
Alicia, no, thank you for inviting me. It's my pleasure and excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, one of the youngest people that we've had in the show. Marinella, tell us, what are you doing and how did you get to do this?
Yes, first of all, what a privilege to be one of the youngest people. I hope not to disappoint. What am I doing? So I am the founder and CEO of Zumma. And at Zumma, we are building the future of autonomous finance, starting with companies in bureaucratic markets, making a lot of their administrative financial processes automated, saving them time and money so that their employees and their directors can focus on what matters most, which is grow their company.
So go ahead.
No, I was gonna say how did you might be asking how did I ended up here? So give you a quick background. I am originally from Venezuela. Yay! But I moved to the US, to Florida specifically, at the age of 13. So I grew up in Orlando. That's what I call my hometown at the moment. And I'm an industrial and systems engineer. Happy to go more into details, but started my career, not many people know this, but I started my career at Lockheed Martin, building the F-35 fighter, and somehow ended up switching to Goldman Sachs. So ended up working a big chunk of my career at Wall Street. I had the opportunity to be one of the first employees at Marcus by Goldman Sachs, which was the consumer bank at Goldman back in the day. And from there, I loved fintech. I loved everything we could do and ended up working in startups in fintech until I arrived into my last startup. That was a startup that was focused in Latin America. I came back and I felt a drawn to where I was from, and I realized that I could bring something back to the region where I was from. I can tell you a little bit more about it if we go more into details. And that's essentially how I decided to start Zumma. I went to do a master's at MIT, which is where I took the time to really look into the market, into the business that I wanted to build. And after I graduated, I went all in, moved to Mexico, and started Zumma.
But you're not in Mexico.
I'm not in Mexico now. I went to Mexico, lived in Mexico for almost a year and a half, almost 2 years, really. And then just moved to San Francisco. I can tell you about my move as well. So now I'm based in SF.
And that's where we had coffee, what, 2 days ago?
2 days ago. It was great coffee.
Yeah, but I've been following you and I met you when you were starting, when Ivan introduced. Ivan was at the podcast as well. So he's he's the founder, the GP of New Mundo. And
he's been great, by the way.
He's great. Everybody in the podcast is great. That's why we invite them. So so for the people, this is about you as a person, but I just want to understand a little bit more about Zumma because a lot of people don't understand what it does and what is the problem you're solving and what is the impact of having Zumma in the organization, because not a lot of people know all that happens behind closed doors.
Yeah, I always like to to tell people about Zumma with an example, because in the US sometimes we forget that this is how we used to do this beforehand, right? So if you work for a company, or really if you're a business owner, right, you have to save all your receipts and you have to know every single expense that you make so that you can deduct it from your taxes. Okay. So if you're an employee of a company and you have travel expenses in the US, right, you probably have to save all your receipts, take a picture of them and send it to your finance team, and also fill out a expense report, right? And when I say this, you probably tell me, oh yeah, but I use Ramp, or I use Concur, or my company has a expense management solution where I pretty much just upload my information, and then they give me a reimbursement if I pay it with my card, or if I pay it with the company card, then I don't have to do anything else, right? Now, imagine that. And on the company side, actually, what they do is when they fill their taxes, they put their expenses as a deduction. And if they're lucky, the IRS says, okay, check, great. But if they get audited, then they have to give all the receipts and all the essentially evidence that this expense is a good expense that should have been deducted. Okay. Now, outside of the US, in many countries in the world, there is something called electronic invoicing. Okay. What this means essentially is that in order for you to deduct an expense from taxes, you have to tell the government that that expense happened the month it happened. And you do this through an electronic invoice that you essentially, it's your certificate that you told the IRS that this happened. But the person who has to do this is the merchant. So it's the person that received the income from your purchase, not essentially yours. Okay. And on top of that, for every expense that you do, you have to pay, for example, in Mexico, which is where we started, a 16% sales tax, which is huge. Mexico 16%, Spain, I think it's over 20%. So it's huge and it makes a difference. And so with having these electronic invoices, you automatically save or get back that 16%. So for companies, it really does make a difference. Okay. But the whole process of getting this electronic invoice is very manual still. And the whole process of expense management and really financial management, it's still very manual and time consuming. And so what we are doing is, with AI, we're automating all of that process. We create in-house agents that scrape websites, that contact merchants through WhatsApp, through phone numbers. We have workflows, like financial workflows that we give our companies. And the idea is that everything is essentially automated. So what we're thriving to is really to build the future of autonomous finance, is starting with one receipt and one invoice at a time.
That's great, because when I lived in Chile, I had 6 companies, and I have to have a full-time employee to make sure that by the 10th of each month, every single invoice that we had paid was accounted for, was sent to the appropriate department, so we can just comply. It was not even about, it was not even about getting paid. It was just to comply. And I thought they had evolved, because I lived in Chile 20 years ago. So when I was talking to you, I said, "Oh my gosh, they still do that." But it's pretty important and cost savings, and it's a regulatory process. How did you come with the idea? How did you come up with the idea?
So it was funny because when we first started Zumma was an AI financial advisor
Mm-hmm.
for normal people.
Mm-hmm.
So it was an app that you put your income, your expenses, and it will essentially give you advice. So it was like you would have the service that essentially the high net worth individuals have through WhatsApp, because WhatsApp was the main, or is the main communication channel and the main app that everybody uses. I think there was this study that says that more than 90% of people in Latin America use WhatsApp, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and after about a year of doing that and building that, we had more than 100,000 downloads, more than 12% conversion rate to paid. So it was going really good. But we realized that the people who were paying us were businesses. Some people were small businesses, other people were literally people that work for a company that had a lot of travel and they had to manage their expenses. And at the same time, when I moved to Mexico, my co-founders were like, "Oh, you made this expense. You have to get the electronic invoice. You have to do this. You have to do that." And every time I would get the electronic invoice, it would be such a pain. So, for example, like Alicia, if I take you to a coffee, right, to a Starbucks, right, which it happened at the beginning, I would take a lot of people that I wanted to meet or potential clients, customers, other entrepreneurs, potential investors. I would take them to coffee, and then in the receipt of the coffee, and I used to have a receipt with me. I have them in my backpack, but in the receipt of the coffee, let's say Starbucks, there's going to be like a website that says starbucks.com/invoicing and a WhatsApp or an email. And so for every single expense, I would have to go home, go to the website, put all my information to get this electronic invoice, or call 20 times, WhatsApp the merchant, sending an email. I need my invoice and I need it before the end of the month. And I actually need it because I can't pay 16% on this coffee because we're a startup. And so, again, me being too used to the US where things, for the most part, work, I saw this process and I was like, why is this so terrible? Why is it so manual? As a good industrial engineer, I was like, we need to optimize this. And I started talking to people, like I started looking at all the businesses that would pay for Zumma, and I would be like, what's your biggest pain point? And they would say, this is my biggest pain point, the invoicing. And then I was like, why are you paying for Zumma? And then literally I would go out and like meet people at networking events, and I was like, how do you do your expenses? Do you get your electronic invoicing? And they would be like, yes, it's the biggest pain point that I have. And but it was funny because my co-founders were like, Nella, shut up. We told you this is impossible to automate. Stop asking people. Because I would tell people and it was like, why is it this way? And then they were like, well, it's so fragmented that it's so impossible to automate. So no one has really tried. And the people who have tried have failed. And I was like, but why? Why? And no one really could give me an answer. And so I sat down with my engineering team and I was like, can we fix this? And they said, it's going to be hard, but yes, I think we could. Obviously, ignorance is bliss because it was harder and more challenging than we ever imagined. But they said yes. They said, I think we can. And so we were like, okay, let's do it. And we literally started doing it like manually, like all of us like just going into the online and calling the merchants for like our customers, telling them that we were the customers. And then we did that for a couple of months. And then the catalyst was McDonald's found us and they called us and they said, we saw that you're doing this online. We needed because we have customers, not customers, but we have employees that at the end of the month, they come to us pretty much crying because they couldn't get the invoice and we can't give them the reimbursement if we don't have that invoice.
Mm-hmm.
And when they told us that, we said, we have something. And that's when we ended up essentially moving our business from our financial advisor for people to this. And so far it's doing good.
Good, good. Well, you
It's still early, but we're getting there.
When did you change? When did you pivot?
Last year.
Last year.
So it was last year. Yeah, beginning of last year.
Okay. So when so I've had many companies, and there's places where people don't care, and there's places where people 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 care, and there's pla In Venezuela, there's places where people trust you, like here. If you get audited, God forbid, because there's the receipts, they get faded and, you can't read it. And, when in my companies, if a receipt is less than $10, we we don't reimburse it. We don't take it. It's just your personal thing, and
Mhm.
charge us for something else. But we're not going to change a $10 bill. It's more expensive for us to change to keep track of that. In When I lived in Chile, we had to physically take 3 or 4 copies of our invoices to the IRS. They had to
Mm.
stamp it, and we had to use them. And then we gave one to the company, one to the IRS equivalent, and one to us. So it was really complicated, and we had to do it every month. So we had stacks and stacks of papers. And when I lived in Australia, it was like, oh, we trust your word. So, so different. But in Australia, you have to keep track of things in a much more detailed way that you have to do it here. So I think that's it's really interesting to see how different countries try to come up with a way to do that. And then you have the exchange rates. So we had to for one of my companies, we had to recalculate the exchange rate on a daily basis for our expenses so we can calculate our profit and losses. And that, because I travel a lot, and that is painful
Yeah.
because the exchange rate changes daily. So, and we never know. We never know. So that is really interesting. Any lessons for yourself when you started? If you were to tell yourself, your younger self, something that you learned in this journey when you started Zumma, what would that be?
I have many lessons, not only for Zumba, but even before that. A couple things, right? Something that we don't talk about. I knew that starting a company was going to be hard. Just to give you a quick background, like I come from a family of entrepreneurs. Everyone in my family had some sort of business. Obviously, more like a small business, nothing here in like in the US. I remember my mom the other day was like, "Oh, because your dad's company was huge. They were making like $30 million revenue a year." And like I looked at her and I was like, I wish Suma was making $30 million a year, but in Silicon Valley, that's still like a startup. Um, so obviously, like it's a completely different game. Um, and so I knew it was hard. I had work at startups. I had an ex-boyfriend when I was at Goldman that had a startup as well. And so I've been very close to what it takes to build a startup. But no one told me that the hardest thing was going to be managing people
Oh my
and
God.
dealing with people in every aspect. Investors, co-workers, co-founders, employees, just other founders, just your family, just people you meet. It's very hard to build a company and have to deal with everyone around it that has some sort of impact or touch, right? That's especially within the company. Like I knew everything was going to be hard. I knew Latin America was going to be extremely hard. I knew raising money was going to be extremely hard. Finding product market fit was extremely hard. I am charging our customers and finding customers, customer acquisition. I knew all of that was going to be extremely hard, and I didn't think about the people aspect of things, and not many people talk about it. So I think that has been a huge one for me, especially if I put into context like the entrepreneurship and starting Suma.
Wait. You cannot leave us there. What have you learned to tackle that challenge?
What have I learned to tackle that
Yeah,
challenge?
don't talk about the problem. Just give us some juicy, responses to that. What have you done?
Yeah,
What do you do?
I think a couple things, right? I think the first one is I pick my battles. You can't you can't please everyone. Um, I remember when we first started, it was chaos because our our first CTO would, I don't want to say fight, but argue with like one of our designers, and our designer then would come to me like being very personal. Then the CTO will come to me being very personal, because that's the other thing. We Latins, we take everything very personal.
Mhm.
Um, I remember when I started my career at Goldman, one of my mentors at Goldman, which was Venezuelan too, he was like, if I can give you one advice is don't take things personal. And he gave me an example of when he first started his career at banking. He literally had a coworker where they literally screamed at each other. They like scream at each other and they say like, "No, you're an idiot. No, you're an idiot." And then by 5 p.m., the guy came back and he was like, "Hey, you want to have a beer?" And then he was telling me that that was like he was like, "Wait, what? What's going on?" And that stayed with me. And so one of the things that I do a lot is don't take things personally. When there is drama around me, don't take it personally. Take a step back, think about it, and resolve it. And then the other thing I found is I've been better at finding people that can actually work at a startup, because a startup is very chaotic, right? So that's the second thing. And then the third thing is I have to trust. I have people that own their areas, like customer acquisition, operations, tech, etc. And even if I don't agree, I might fight it, but then I go, ultimately, you're the owner of that area. So if you think that's the way, let's do it. If it doesn't work, I'm gonna say to myself, I knew I was right, but I'm not gonna tell you. And then we're gonna try something else again, right? So if we fail fast, it's better, right? And just try to do that culture of hire slow but fire fast. Like we've had to like let go of people,
Mhm.
and it's been the hardest thing I had to do in my life so far. I think now I'm already like, okay, I'm immune to it. But at the beginning I was like, but they have a family, but like what are they gonna do? But how are they gonna live? But then I was like, yes, but the drama and the emotional things that come out of me, like don't let me work and focus on the things that I have to focus on, because I have to deal with somebody else's emotions, right? And it happens the same in my personal life, right? New Year's Eve, right? I have a video. I was working, answering customer support, and my family were like listening to music, eating dinner, and eating hallacas, and they were like, "Why are you working?" Like literally, everyone was on top of me. Why are you working? Shut down the computer, whatever. And I have to turn around and be like, "Leave me alone. Like this is my boundary. Like I have a business to run. So if you don't like it, then don't look at me."
Yeah.
And so I think it's everything about like boundaries, because 100% of your time really at the beginning has to be on your company. And
Yeah.
so yeah.
That is so funny. I have a saying that my family hated, and some of my the people that work with me hated, and it's no me sirve. It doesn't work for me. And what you say is very true. And I tell people I'm going to hold you to a high standard, but I don't micromanage. I'm going to tell you we need to do that. You say you can do that. We're going to do it at this time. Go for it. And if you make a mistake, that's fine, but just don't freeze because sometimes people freeze. And my family hated when I said no me sirve. I don't even want to entertain that. Just no me sirve. And I remember when my parents moved here, and I moved here 12 years ago. I moved from Australia and Denmark. My parents moved from Venezuela. My mom used to tell me, I hate it when you say no me sirve. It doesn't work for me. And now everybody uses it. And it solves so many problems because then you don't want to, it's like you don't want to hurt their feelings. And the Chileans have a saying, it's better to be red once than to be yellow forever. And
I
it's
like
like,
that.
just say that, it doesn't work for me. And it has nothing to do with you as a person. It's just, this is not a solution. and now everybody uses it. And
I
even
love it.
the little kids, no me sirve. It is like, yeah, can you please try? No me sirve. Doesn't work for me. I don't even want to try. So that's really funny. But I think that's one of the hardest things, especially as a Latin American or an Asian, as a person from those cultures where our tribes are very important for us and supporting and having compassion to each other. It's very hard to just have firm decisions or firm boundaries, which
Mhm.
Americans call healthy boundaries. We just don't understand that. What do you mean healthy? There's
Yeah.
nothing healthy. I want you to go with me.
And it's funny because and my mom is gonna hate me for saying this, but I started putting the boundaries this year because I couldn't. And obviously your Latin parents are always, it's always about them, right? So then my mom was like, okay, you don't want to talk to me. You don't want to do this. You don't want to do that. I'm not going to talk to you. So I'm not kidding. She didn't talk to me for 3 months
Oh
just
my God.
because I put in my boundaries. And it was very interesting because you could see like when I talk to people, it's very
Uh-huh.
cultural, very, 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 very
Uh-huh.
cultural. I think she's okay now and she has to live with it. But it was very hard. And I think for families, it's very hard. Like every time I have to see my family and I have to work, oh my God, it's so much drama, so much drama.
Yeah, yeah. Well, because they feel that you don't love them. That's it. They feel rejected.
And they're
And
like, and if it's your company, you can do whatever you want. And you're like, actually, no, it's even worse.
I do say that. I do say that. And my parents, I mean, they're not entrepreneurial at all. They're educators, and they believe that you create knowledge, you need to do very, very philanthropic, both of them. And they can't figure out, well, I'm doing this, I'm an investor. And my dad's like, well, that thing that you do, that you give people money, and it's like they don't understand, or he didn't understand. He passed away, but I think this is really interesting for a lot of people that are listening to us because there's a lot of cultural issues, and when we have diverse teams, which in my opinion are the best, we have to
Mhm.
account for that, and there's certain cultures where you would not tell somebody something that they need to hear because you don't want to hurt their feelings. And
100%.
and but nothing gets done. You can't do something, but you won't tell them I can't do this. You just make it up, and it just creates all these very interesting challenges.
And to add to that point, I think for me, it was kind of a reverse cultural shock, right? Because I started my career in the US. So I'm
Hmm.
very used to how people in the US work.
Yeah,
At the end of the day, people are very direct. They're receptive to feedback. That's what like they teach you, right?
yeah.
Yes, they do like the feedback
It's
sandwich
candid.
thing that they say two good things, one bad thing, whatever it is. But it's still it's direct. You get the message, right? I think for us Latins, like we are scared of telling that feedback because of how the other person could react. And I think, especially in Mexico, people in Mexico don't say no. So when you sell, when you do feedback, and when you do all these things, you always have to say like, but was that a real yes, or was it like a no yes,
That has happened to me. That's so funny.
or what is it? So I've had to like learn to really understand those cues. Um, and then my team is I have team from everywhere, right? Like my engineers are from Venezuela, but my co-founders are from Mexico. I have another team member from Argentina. And so you might think that all of us are used to the same and we have similar cultures, but it's completely different.
Yeah.
And so I've had to like be adaptable on like each person's communication style to be able to really move the team forward. And I think that was something that at the beginning it was very hard, very hard. We would argue a lot. And now I think as a team, we found the adaptability and how each of us react to certain thing and are able to tell that feedback and move fast at the end of the day. We had no choice otherwise because we were gonna die if we didn't. But
Yeah.
But we were able to
And,
do it.
and the team adjust. It's like in some cultures in Asia or certainly in Scandinavia, you don't sugarcoat things. In Finland, it's like, can you do this? No, no, no. I mean, there's no. If you
Like,
say
okay.
that to a Chilean or a Japanese, if you say that to a Korean and you're in a authoritarian position,
Mhm.
um, unheard of.
Yeah,
You say, well, let me think about it, and yeah. But that's cultural issues are really interesting, and I think they make the world a better place because if everybody was like one, it would be so boring. Yeah.
100%.
Yes, that's let me switch back to this is so funny. I can think of so many jokes. Yeah. Um, Let me switch back to the personal part because we try to keep it short, which is impossible. I mean, two Venezuelans, despedida de borracho, for those who speak Spanish, it's a
I love that.
farewells of the drunkies. It's like 4 hours to say goodbye. But we try to keep it short, which we failed miserably with Venezuelans. Last question to
100%.
you, which is a very philosophical question.
Mhm.
Um, it goes back to Venezuela. When I was 13, I fell off a horse in Caracas, broke my appendix. I ended up in coma because I didn't want to tell anybody that I had fallen from a horse. We didn't tell my aunt and uncle. We didn't tell my parents, and I ended up being extremely sick. And a few days later, I had emergency surgery, and I died, but I came back. So, as we say, they sent me back. They said, go back, go back,
Not
go back.
yet. This is
Not
not
yet.
your
Not
time.
your turn.
You have somewhere to be.
Yeah, yeah. But since I was a young person, I was 13 or 12, I don't remember. I saw that my life is going to end. Um, and I had a joke with my grandson who asked me, "When are you gonna die?" And I said, "I don't know." "Are you gonna die?" "Yes." "Do you know?" "No." "How?" "No, I don't know." "When?" "I have no clue." "So you know you're gonna die, but you don't know how?" "Yep." "Are you sure?" "Yes." And he's, questioning that. And then finally he says, okay, he gives up on me. And he says, well, I don't know about you, abuela, but I'm not dying. So I thought that not happening to me. So, but I thought, I will cease to exist. And then I kept thinking spiritually who I am. Who am I? What is my essence? When I'm not here, what is what I leave behind? And that is a question that I have for my guests, and that's a question I'm posing to you. So, who are you when you're no longer here?
I love that question, and I thought a lot about it since we talked on Tuesday. And I had a very similar experience to you in which I lost my father very early. I was 16 when he passed away.
Right.
And it was a very sudden death, meaning I talked to him yesterday and today he suffered a stroke and he passed away. Like it was very sudden and very fast.
Wow.
Um, and the reason why I share this is because that moment changed my life in terms of you can be here today and die tomorrow, right? And I think that has shaped a lot of how I live my life, um, and how I do what I do, right? Um, we haven't talked about this, but I've been to like over 60 countries. I love cultures and things like this. But it's also mainly because of that, because is before I die, what do I want to have seen, experienced, accomplished? Um, and I don't think too much about what the legacy is or what people are going to think about me because at the end of the day, I think it's irrelevant. Um, but if I could leave something behind, to my future children, or to the people that are um, close to me, I would say the part of it is the inspiration of shooting their goals, shooting to their goals, right? Because sometimes, and I remember early in my career, you would see people that start companies, that become managing directors, that become the president of the United States and all these things. And you see that, oh, wow, they were so privileged, or they were so smart, or they were there. But when you get closer to them, they're normal people,
Yeah.
right? And so I would love the people to know or to feel that if she was able to do all these things, I can do them too, right? And it doesn't mean that you have to like stop being you or not having your same essence, and being honest with you and everyone that is around you. But I think it's that, right? And like kind of I try to optimize everything in terms of if things don't work, I want to fix them. And so if you can fix something in your life, in your community, like around you, I think also this world would be a better place. Like it's funny because I see like Elon Musk say, "Oh, we want to go to Mars," and like my husband is like, "Do you imagine us going to Mars?" And I'm like, "Why would I want to go to Mars? The Earth is so beautiful." Like I've been privileged enough to go and see a lot of the world, and I'm like, "Why do I want to go to like a brown place where there's so many beautiful things here?" And so I think it would live every day of your life as if it was ending tomorrow, and like do what you want or what your purpose you feel it is, like just go after it. Um, because the only time you have to do it is now. So if I would leave something for someone, I think it would be that, because we spend so much time waiting for the perfect moment, for the perfect things, and we stop living the journey. That's the other thing. Leave the journey. Like the journey is the beauty. It's not the end goal. It's living the journey and taking advantage of everything every single day. And the small things are the ones that make the difference. So that's what I would teach my children.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. What is the best way to reach you? Is that LinkedIn, Zumma? What is the best way?
LinkedIn is great. Marinella, Marinella, Pinate or Pinate. You can also shoot me an email, first name at,
We'll put it on the credits.
yeah,
Yeah.
we'll put it there. I'm also on Twitter, even though I don't use it that much, but if you message me, I will respond. So any social media
Any
you got,
form.
you
Okay.
can,
Well, thank you so much for being with us.
No, thank you, Alicia, for inviting me. This was great. Hopefully, someone can gain something from this conversation. And thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed this podcast. It is so rewarding to talk to a young entrepreneur. And there's one thing that now, where everybody talks about Venezuelans, there's one thing that reminds me of what makes our culture, and it is kindness and warmth. We were just talking after we finalized, and we call everybody mi amor, my love. My mother-in-law used to call me my beloved heart, my son. We just have such sweet way of communicating. And in this period where there's so much polarization and so much anger, what really matters is how we treat others. And if we can do a daily practice of peace and kindness, that is going to make a difference. It's going to make a difference in the world. And it is my wish that we can all do that more often. This is your host, Alicia Castillo Holley. Thank you for being with us, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for tuning in to our Wealthing Talks. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. To stay connected, visit us at wealthing.com. This is Alicia Castillo Holley, your host, and until next time, yours in Wealthing.